Episode 4 of Gen V Season 2 just dropped a bombshell on our heads because we now know the superpower of one of the most enigmatic men in the series, Cipher. The new Dean of God U has been portrayed as your typical all-knowing villain, but Episode 4 revealed the extent to which this is true for him. Cipher's powers were a massive mystery until now. We finally know what he can do, and it's scarier than we could have ever imagined. So, without further ado, we're ready to dive into it. This is Cipher's real power explained. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we do have a quick request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. He seems all-knowing to a degree. Cipher's uncanny intel. From the very beginning, there's been very little that you can hide from Cipher. When he was introduced in Episode 1, we learned that he was making Kate cooperate with him by force more than anything, and he was doing it by reading her like an open book. Kate isn't the kind of person that one can decipher quickly. I mean, her boyfriend and friends didn't know she was involved with an illegal experiment for several months. That's how good she is at hiding her crimes. And a major part of this is her power. Kate's telepathy is one of the strongest abilities we've seen in the boys' franchise so far. She can read people's thoughts, and if she touches them, she can manipulate them however she sees fit. But somehow, Kate can never intimidate Cipher because A, she's intimidated by him herself, and B, he always seems to negate her powers. In the first episode of Gen V Season 2, we saw Kate trying to get close enough to Cipher so she could push him. The screen starts moving into the animation that's usually associated with this ability, but Cipher cancels it and threatens to blend her arm into his protein shake. This was perceived by us as him having superior intellect, because anyone who wants to work with Kate needs to know how to work around her pesky abilities. But that's not the only thing that Cipher does. When she visits him at his home, she tries to get clearance for her revenge against Marie, Jordan, and Emma, and Cipher correctly deduces that she's in no state to do that, considering she doesn't even have her powers yet. In any given situation, he seems to know what's going on, and that can be chalked up to his intelligence network, we suppose. Vought has thousands of employees, both on and off the books. Maybe Cipher is just having everyone tracked at all times, but then how did he figure out that Marie saw the picture of him holding her as a baby and that she wants to know more about why she's Odessa? That's a scene we saw play out quite clearly, and no intelligence agents seemed to be present at the time. Sure, it's possible that Vought just hacked her cell phone and recorded her talking to Pam or something, but that wouldn't explain Cipher's scarily detailed and accurate account of what happened that day. His uncanny ability to read people feels a lot like clairvoyance, and in fact, Cipher told Kate that there's nothing he doesn't see early on in Season 2, so is he a telepath? Well, there is some evidence for this. Kate can't read him, hints of his telepath abilities. The problem with reading Cipher isn't that Kate hasn't tried. She was trying to read him before her powers started malfunctioning due to her brain injury. People might confuse her not being able to read people now with her not trying in the past, but that isn't the case. Kate simply can't read Cipher at all. In Episode 4, she said she tried to read him in the past, but she was never able to do so. Something was blocking her, and if you ask us, this sounds a lot like telepathic blocking. In the X-Men comics, the only way to protect yourself from a powerful telepath is to A, use something like Magneto's helmet, or B, be a telepath yourself. All telepaths shield their minds at all times, which blocks other telepaths from reading their thoughts. These psychic shields are a staple in stories featuring Charles Xavier, who has several of them installed within his own mind. A telepathic shield would explain how Cipher was able to protect his mind from Kate's reading, and also how he could anticipate her trying to push him. If Cipher can read thoughts as well, then Kate's basically an open frequency for him. He can figure out what she's thinking about doing in an instant and negate it like he did with her push attempt. Stronger telepaths are capable of treating weaker telepaths like trash, so it makes sense that Kate is no match for him. He's so old that it's impossible to tell how long he's been perfecting his powers. If he has 20 years of experience reading and manipulating minds, then he's in a league of his own, especially because he seems to have knowledge on how to evolve a soup. One of Cipher's main storylines has been the hero optimization classes he's been holding. He claims that these gladiatorial endeavors will allow every person chosen for the class to transcend their current level and evolve into their final glorious forms. As an example, he showed us that Marie doesn't need to cut herself to manipulate blood. Hell, she doesn't even need to raise her hands. If she can focus hard enough and make all the blood in her vicinity feel like it's a part of her, then she can control that blood however she bloody well wants. This brings us to a second possibility for what Cipher's power could be, and we'll get to that in a few moments, but we want to close out this section by saying that if Cipher is in fact a telepath, telepath, then he must not be a manipulator type because we don't really see him pushing people like Kate does. This could be a byproduct of his ego. Perhaps Cipher knows he's so good at reading people's minds that he doesn't need to manipulate them so crudely, but we suspect this is a limitation rather than a feature. There's also the fact that it seems like it takes Cipher a few minutes to charge his powers. Before using them, he went to the toilet to take a crap, and as he did that, he had his phone out. It could be possible he's got some sort of power that's digitally activated, and that maybe brings clairvoyance back on the table. It's also possible that Cipher was just texting someone to work alongside him. That was pretty much disproven by the end of the episode. The reason we say Cipher isn't exactly a manipulator like Kate isn't to say that he can't push people, it's to say that he can do a whole lot more than that. Manipulators can only control actions for a certain amount of time. Even Kate's pushes don't last for days unless she specifically frames them that way, and she doesn't do that because it takes a lot out of her. Plus, manipulation isn't as good as outright control. When you manipulate someone, you risk them fighting back against you. Kate has experienced this firsthand with Luke and Sam because she wiped their memories constantly, and yet the memories kept coming back. There's a reason it's called manipulation, and it's because manipulation usually doesn't last that long, or as a superpower at the very least. Cipher seems to possess the latter ability, and we'll get into that in a minute. Before we do that though, we have to address the other possibility we were talking about, because there was a moment in the episode where it seemed like his power was something else entirely. He knows too much about Marie's power, hints about his involvement in Odessa. From the very beginning, Cipher has been way too interested in Marie's abilities. When he sent Victor after her in episode 1, it became clear to us that this hero optimization class was started to make her evolve. Cipher also has way too much knowledge on how superpowers work, especially those based on blood, because he tells Marie that she doesn't know the difference between cutting herself and controlling the blood that's around her. He asks her which part of blood she manipulates, and she can't tell him because she doesn't know, but it feels like Cipher sure does because he trained Marie in episode 4 and his notes on how to use her powers were clinical in their accuracy. He told Marie to basically commune with the blood cells within individual blood bags and make them fly from one table to another. When she accomplished that, he moved on to goats just to see how far Marie could control the blood of an actual living being. While she was making Elon Musk fly, and yeah, that's the goat's name, Marie noticed something that broke her concentration and blew Musk apart. She unconsciously read Cipher's blood and noticed that it didn't have any compound V in it. This made her think that Kate could just lie to him and get him to call off the fight between her and Jordan, but as we saw by the end of the episode, that didn't end up working. Everyone assumed that Cipher didn't have powers because Marie said his blood didn't have V, but by the end of the episode, Cipher proved that he did have powers, and in fact, he was so strong that he made his blood lie for him. Now, there are two possibilities here. The first is that he used his telepathy on Marie to make her think that he didn't have V in his system. That's quite possible if Cipher is as refined of a telepath as we think he might be, because he's the most secretive character in franchise history. There's literally no information about this guy except that he's been involved in some seriously shady stuff, and all of that stuff couldn't have been done without powers. Considering Cipher's love for privacy, I mean, the guy cycles to work after all, it would make sense that he just implants this suggestion into people's minds unconsciously when they try to read him in any way. The other explanation is that Cipher, like Marie, can manipulate blood, and that's much more terrifying because it hints at what she'll be able to do eventually. If Marie is truly capable of interacting with and altering blood on a cellular level, then she should technically be able to hide the fact that she has compound V in her system. That would give her the ultimate protection from things like the soup virus that Butcher has in his possession, but would also be great to fool those who don't know about such things. Granted, there aren't many people like that left in the world, but that's not the point. Cipher is either a telepath who can trick people into thinking he's powerless, or he's a blood manipulator who can do pretty much the exact same thing. This would explain why he knows so much about Marie's abilities specifically, and why he's a part of Project Odessa as well. Remember that in the first scene of Gen V Season 2, we saw Thomas's research partners shooting themselves up with Odessa, and they all died horrible blood-based deaths. Episode 4 has hinted that Thomas somehow survived that fire because Jordan and Kate found a chamber in the vault in Cipher's home, and there was a severely burned body within. That can only be Thomas Godolkin based on the pieces of information we've got from this series, and Cipher is apparently Thomas's son. Godolkin was a worshipper of Frederick Vaught, so it makes sense that he had his own son shot up with V and turned into one of the most enigmatic and lethal soups in existence. And this also explains Cipher's obsession with studying and perfecting subjects, which is a trait he seems to have inherited from his father. So which one is it? Is Cipher a telepath, or can he control blood? Well, we learn towards the former because of what happens at the end of episode 4. That's because he controlled Jordan Lee's body and remained conscious. Cipher's mind control abilities explained. Towards the end of episode 4 of Gen V's second season, Cipher did something that even we didn't see coming. He took control of Jordan Lee's mind and body and started fighting Marie Moreau, pushing her into using her powers on a human. This would have been crazy enough if he did it via touch, but what's insane is Cipher just used his eyes to take control of Jordan. When he fixed his eyes upon them, he transferred his consciousness into them, and he was able to speak through them to Marie in the ring. It took Marie a second to realize that her partner was being controlled by the man who was pushing her into evolving, and that made fighting back even harder for her. Cipher wasn't kidding when he said that he knew a lot about superpowers. He was able to use Jordan's female form as efficiently as they do, blasting Marie with several strong punches and force field attacks to push her onto the ground. Then, when Marie finally took control of the match by making Jordan's body levitate, that's when Cipher finally let go of them and Jordan returned to being themselves. To prove that this was indeed a flex, the camera cut between the in-ring action and Cipher controlling Jordan, and we clearly saw him saying the words that were coming out of their mouth. This removes the possibility of someone else covering for Cipher, because now it's clear that he's an insanely strong telepath. He was able to read Kate's thoughts in a second, seeing through her deception and even finding the camera that she'd planted in the room. He then literally took over Jordan Lee, which is something we know telepaths in this universe can do. When Sam visited Kate in the hospital, she briefly touched a nurse and transferred her consciousness, and therefore her murderous intent, into her. Cipher seems to be doing exactly that, but on a much grander and more refined scale. Unlike Kate, he doesn't need to touch people to control them, and he can do it far more efficiently than she can. Now, we have to point out the fact that there still can be a different explanation for this. For example, when Jordan regained control of their body, we saw the blood vessels in their face rearranging themselves. This is a visual cue that's mostly used for Marie's ability, so it's possible that Cipher is a bloodbender as well. If that's the case, then Marie's potential as a soup just blew Homelander out of the water, because if blood manipulation can let her straight up control minds, then there's really no telling how powerful she can become. And then, there's also the possibility that Cipher has someone working for him whom he's secretly coordinating with. That would explain why he left his meeting with Kate so abruptly, and why Hamish Linklater pulled out a cell phone after giving us a view of the woods. But if it's actually Cipher who has the power, then we're putting our chips on Master Telepath and leaving them there. That perfectly explains everything he's been able to accomplish and why he seems to be 6 steps ahead of the competition. So far, the Gen V squad has been playing right into his hands, and that's quite typical when you're up against a telepath. So if we're right, and he's the most powerful telepath in the world right now, that is, up until Kate makes a full recovery. And if you want to know why we said that, then watch our video on her anatomy, because it'll bust this case wide open for you. Marvelous verdict! But as far as this video is concerned, that's all we got for you, so let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Is Cipher the most powerful telepath in the boys' verse? It's true Professor X? Or is he something else? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe before you get commenting, because we'll be on top of all Gen V developments right up until October 22nd rolls around. We'll see you with our next video real soon, but until then, stay safe, try not to piss off your teachers, because they might turn out to be homicidal maniacs like Dean Cipher over here.